Hey, fans, how's it going? Jeff, the guy from Reston here. Let's talk about something that's really not that important, unless, of course, you're a Star Trek fan. Okay, no, forget Star Trek. Let's talk about automobiles, cars. Okay, now you're either a Ford man, a Chevy man, or a Dodge man. Okay, I'm a Dodge guy. I kind of like Dodge ever since I had my 1965 Dodge Dart when I was a teenager. You know, always had a big fan for the Dodge boys, and the Dodge cars from the 20s and from the 20s and 30s, and um, so sorry to see that the Dodge brothers died so early in life. Anyways, let's talk about what's going on and new. First of all, the Chrysler Corporation, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if they're running out of money to invest in new technologies, what the deal is, but you can't keep relying on a 5.7 Hemi that you're not going to develop, a 6.4 Hemi that you've already developed, and a 6.2 Hemi that you developed with a supercharger on there. You're going to have to go with something a little bit more feasible and economical to the general public. Number one, you also have to look at fuel economy and a few other things. Not everybody out there can afford a 500 horsepower muscle car. I can't afford one; they're just too expensive. But I would love to say get a smaller version car or a mid-sized car that say maybe only had say 325 horsepower or 425 horsepower. Um, this is what really gets me about Dodge and Chrysler and the divisions and who's in charge and what they're doing. And, you know, I wish somebody would actually come and talk to me because first thing I would have done was if you're going to have a new Dodge Charger, I would have taken that 1999 Dodge Charger concept and not necessarily made that specific concept car of the new car, but I would have turned around, I would have re-engineered it. I would have made it to house um, the Hellcat engine, and it's going to hold the Hellcat engine as well as four other motors in there that are going to get the car going faster than any other car on the track because it's also lighter in weight. And I think that's the other thing too, is we need to look at cars who are lighter in weight as well as this. I mean, a Dodge Charger on a curb weight with a 5.7 Hemi is 4,200 pounds. I mean, that's 2 tons. That's more than 2 tons. Whereas, say, a Charger from the 60s only weighed about a little more than 3,000 pounds. So it's 1,000 pounds heavier. You have to use a lot more engine, a lot more power, and a lot more gas. And I think if you're going to make a muscle car of the future, it's got to be efficient as well as looking good and handling well. It's got to be able to corner well. It's got to be able to basically have a great top drive, top speed. And basically, when you're cruising out on the highway, wouldn't it be nice to get, between 30 and 35 mpg on the highway, so you're not visiting a gas pump every 2 to 300 miles? I mean, this is the whole idea behind a car, is to basically being able to go out there and cruise. And I think Dodge and Chrysler, they need to go back to the drawing board when it comes to their large and mid-sized cars. Stop trying to build variants of a Mercedes-Benz Class E platform, which is the Charger and the Chrysler 300 platform is a Mercedes-Benz E-Class car platform. So if you buy a Mercedes-Benz E-Class, you know how heavy they are, right? So they're not very fast, but they are luxurious and they are nice. I mean, I've driven an E-Class Mercedes. They're beautiful cars. I'm not knocking it. But let's build a beautiful car that's efficient, that basically is powerful, so we can do 0 to 60 in 5 seconds or less, can do the quarter mile in a reasonable good amount of time. so that uh, people that buy these cars are proud of them and have the performance that's necessary. I mean, here's what I would do. Number one, I saw a concept picture of, it wasn't a Barracuda, they called it, but it looked like a four-door version of a Dodge Viper, but with a stubby front nose. So I was thinking that maybe if they took that concept and they basically put the right engines up there and kept it front wheel drive for the four cylinder and the optional V6 for, you know, most of the people that would drive it with an automatic transmission that you can shift automatically with a manual drive. I think that'd be great. Then basically let's move up, to a more powerful car. How about a 2.7 liter V6 with 305 horsepower, a 4.2 liter overhead cam V6 that's basically a Hemi motor, the 5.7 Hemi with the last two cylinders chopped off. Right. And have that e-charged so you can get about 425 out of it. Wouldn't that be pretty cool to drive? And it's on a 3,000-pound car or less with all that extra power. So you have a 305, 405, and let's just throw in a real small block V8. Take Chrysler's 4.7 liter V8, bore it, stroke it to 4.8 liters, turn around, e-charge that thing to get about 475 or 480 horsepower. And that's all you need for such a small car, and it would be quicker than anything else. And if you want to call a Barracuda, call it whatever you want, but make it look the part, make it act the part, and make sure when you're going down the highway, I mean, with the exception of the V8 motor, of course, you should be able to get at least 30 miles to the gallon on the highway with the two other 6-cylinder motors. So you're not basically burning up fuel when you're trying to, say, if you live in Washington, D.C., you want to drive to Pennsylvania to visit your grandmother's or whatever, you're not burning up a ton of fuel to get there. You're only burning up, say, you drive 200 miles, you only burn up half a tank of gas, something along those lines. I think Chrysler is going in the wrong direction now. Believe me, 2011 was a changer for the Charger. They revamped it. They made it look better. It was more aerodynamic. They redid the Challenger, the same thing. But I think if you're going to be on par with what's happening, you've got to turn around and start looking at other things. And one of the things you have to look back at is you're going to have to look at future designs. And future designs are the mainstay of the automotive industry. Now, John Micardo had basically turned around and had two drawings of a new Charger, what it would look like in 2020 and 2021, the Charger and the Challenger. And I mean, if Dodge built those cars and put them up and stuff like that and created the Barracuda, and stuff like that, with turbocharged engines or e-charged engines rather than just big thirsty V8s. And you still had a V8 or two in there, but they'd be e-charged rather than or supercharged to get the power necessary. So you're not having a 600 horsepower motor that only gets about 12 miles a gallon. Even with I'll put it to you like this: even with the MDS system that turns the 8-cylinder into a 4-cylinder, the 6.4 Hemi only gets 14 miles to the gallon and 21 miles to the gallon on the highway. Now, okay, fine. If you like buying gas every 300 miles, that's fine, but that's an expensive. If you want to say do a road trip and drive to St. Louis from say Washington, D.C., I mean, you'd have to fill up for gas, oh, at least 3 or 4 times to get to St. Louis, um, to make it. I mean, I drove. I remember I did a trip out to St. Louis from Reston, and I had a Dodge Stratus. It was a 2005 Dodge Stratus. Last year they made it. It had a V6 in it, an automatic transmission. I averaged about 33 miles to the gallon, and I only filled up twice. Once at the Costco in Sterling, and then once in Illinois, um, or in Ohio, just east of Columbus. That's correct. But the thing is, if Chrysler wants to go forward, it's nice that you have some thundering engines that are eights. Not arguing with you on that. I think you'd still do that. But you need to put yourself in line with better standards. Another thing I'd love to see Chrysler do was back in the 80s, Chrysler had a concept vehicle. It wasn't really a concept vehicle. It was sort of an experimental vehicle that they used for development. It was called the M4S. They put it in a movie called The Wraith, which didn't really do well in the movie theaters, um, but it was capable. It tested on a track, and it did 194 miles an hour, and it basically was a 4-cylinder with twin turbos on it. I wouldn't say put a 4-cylinder in there, but say maybe develop your own modular V8. That's a small block, and then turn around and twin turbocharge that, and give yourself or a modular V6 that comes from a V8. I mean, you could take the 6.4 Hemi, turn that into a 6, and e-charge it, and and then put that in the M4S. The other thing, and you probably have to redesign the M4S a little bit for access to get in and out of the car. It's not a very user-friendly car. You'd have to make it more friendly to the general public. But then again, you'd have a car with a 6-cylinder motor in it, turbocharged or e-charged, however you want to call it, and the thing will go 250, can travel as fast as 250 miles an hour. Personally, myself, I'm just happy if I buy a Dodge Charger RT and put the Scat Pack on it, and if the thing does 150 miles an hour, I'm happy with that, because basically, I'm not trying to outrun the cops, and the only time I would travel that fast is if I had permission once I got to a racing track, and then signed a bunch of waivers saying I wouldn't sue or anything else like that in case I wrecked the car or whatever. But yeah, so this is what goes on, and I think personally, if they don't look at that 1999 Dodge Charger concept and maybe do a little tweaking here and there and stuff like that, and give it what it needs to make it look the part, as well as handle the part. I mean, it should be able to hold the road like any car. Chrysler needs to get away from these big boxy cars. I know a lot of people like them. They look, they look nice. I don't really care for boxy cars. I gotta go. Got a phone call. Hello. Okay, we're back. Sorry about that, folks. It was a advertisement phone call. I thought somebody was going to call me tonight. No, they didn't. So this is my saying on it, and that is, let's go and let's have Chrysler build cars that the general public will like, that are quick, efficient, and do their job. And the thing is the fact that let's have cars that look the part. Let's get cars that act the part. Like back in the 80s when they built the K cars, great idea, but the only problem was the K cars were carbureted. They were carbureted. They were cheap. They were this. They were that. I mean, if Chrysler really wants to win the war with the Japanese, they got to build high quality stuff that basically is efficient. I mean, that's what really has to be at the center of it. I mean, you could build a couple of performance cars. I think it was great. I think you should have never done away. Chrysler should have never done away with Plymouth. I think they should bring Plymouth back and have a Plymouth division where you have a car like the Prowler and put that on the Plymouth division like that. I mean, I wouldn't use that, but another car the concept vehicle they could bring back would be the Venom and also the Copperhead. I don't, maybe, you could tweak the thing up a little bit, but if you put a turbocharged 2.7 liter 6-cylinder in the Copperhead with a 6-speed manual transmission and it was geared just right, I mean, that little car would take off like a rocket. And you could still put in the Fiat motor as a base motor for it if you want to. But if you wanted something with a bit more juice and a bit more power, put in the V6 and the supercharged V6 to give it the power necessary to. And when you're dealing with that much power, make the supercharged V6 a rear-wheel drive car rather than a front-wheel drive car. I mean, do you think it would be too expensive to say if you're going to manufacture a performance car with 300 plus horsepower that it's going to be rear-wheel drive and everything under 300 horsepower is going to be front-wheel drive? And I think that's what you guys at Chrysler should be working on rather than turning around and building a bunch of cars that nobody can afford to buy. I mean, I have to think about looking at another car myself because I think either my engine's giving out or my transmission's slipping. It's one of the two. I got to call the garage tomorrow to have my car looked at to find out what's going on. So, anyways, but anyways, what the drawings that I've seen for the 2020 Dodge Charger and the 2020 Dodge Challenger really has me concerned. And if Chrysler wants to go with these same boxy looking cars, fine. When they first came out, I agree with you. Chargers they sold, people bought them, but let's stop building boxy looking cars because you can only do so much with them to make them look nice. Chrysler had a winning thing with a capboard design technology. I would have basically on all your large cars, I would have got rid of the front wheel drive and gone with a back wheel drive. And for like the Dodge Intrepid RT, I would have put a V8 in there along with the Chrysler LHS and Concorde, V8 and rear wheel drive. Put a small block V8 in there with rear wheel drive with just a little more than 300 horsepower. You had like 325 horsepower that would have made that car stand up off the ground. But it wasn't a very Intrepids and Concords. They weren't very heavy cars, but they were comfortable to drive. They were clean to drive, and they got good gas mileage. And if you had a halfway decent transmission in them, if you could have put an 8 or a 9-speed transmission in an Intrepid or Concorde, outfitted it with a 3.5 liter engine and stuff like that, I mean, you could have gotten almost 40 miles a gallon with that car. So I think Chrysler needs to go back and start looking at the drawing board about cars that are more efficient, not necessarily as well as powerful to drive and build. That's my take on the situation. Anyways, y'all take care. Good night. Peace. God loves you. Bye-bye.